Hey everyone, Victor here. Got another video dedicated to solely CPAP. I'm going to update the last CPAP video. Audio wasn't that great again. And then there is a fourth indication related to a flail chest in trauma that you might see in certain protocols. And so Marty recently did a breakdown of when to use each device on the table, whether that's a nasal cannula, a non-rebreather, or a BVM, a nebkit. He has that breakdown. So I'll link it in the upper right-hand corner. This is solely for CPAP, which is short for continuous positive airway pressure, okay? The most intuitive indication for CPAP is probably, in our opinion, pulmonary edema. So you have someone who's short of breath. They probably have rales and crackles bilaterally, typically at the base of their lungs. And then they have peripheral edema, maybe JVD, pink frothy sputum, positional shortness of breath. So they typically sleep on a mountain of pillows. They have to sleep sitting up. If they were lay supine, that edema would kind of be spread throughout the apex and the base of the lungs, which would make the SOB a little worse. And so we would initially start them off on a non-rebreather at 15 liters per minute. If they weren't feeling better after reassessment, our option, even in the BLS side, is a device called CPAP. And now some of the things that we need our patient to be before we just apply CPAP, they need to be alert and oriented ×4. They have to be able to maintain their airway. And then they need a systolic of at least 90. We say 90 millimeters of mercury because that's the national standard for hypotension. And one of the side effects of CPAP is hypotension, of lowering someone's blood pressure. It applies pressure to someone's preload, to their vena cava. And if it applies pressure to the preload, that means less blood coming to the heart, which inevitably means less blood leaving the heart, which then leads to lowering of someone's blood pressure. So ANO ×4 and an adequate systolic BP. Become very familiar with the CPAP that your employer or department uses. Ours, simply put, at the distal end of our oxygen tubing is going to be an orange tab that reminds us to apply 10 liters per minute of oxygen. And then the only thing we need to adjust is the level of PEEP, okay? Now, when I turn this on, it's gonna be relatively loud. And if it's your patient's first time using this device, then they're going to be scared, frightened, overwhelmed, understandably so. If it's their second time or third time using it, they're probably going to rip it out of your hands because they know how helpful it can be. This can prevent someone from going into respiratory failure and us having to utilize a respiratory arrest eventually, and us having to utilize a supraclavic device if you're ALS intubation. And so once you turn it on, give it to the patient and instruct them to hold it to their face and try to create a good seal. And once they become comfortable, right, we're doing this to give them a sense of control, and once they become comfortable, then we can apply the black straps over their head. The only thing we need to adjust is this PEEP level right here, and it starts at 5 centimeters of water, the next one up is 7.5, and the last one is 10 centimeters of water. PEEP, very quickly, for short, is positive end expiratory pressure. It is the amount of pressure that is created within your alveoli, or left within your alveoli at the end of your exhale. And so people with COPD, emphysema specifically, they have a hard time maintaining the structural integrity of their alveoli. So when they exhale, their alveoli might collapse. And this positive airway pressure maintains that compliancy, right? That, I don't know if I just made that up, but that integrity of the alveoli, allowing for gas exchange to continue to occur. So severe respiratory distress is going to be the second indication. So pulmonary edema was the first one. Severe respiratory distress, and they probably have a history of COPD and emphysema, is going to be the second one. The third one is going to be respiratory distress, but with wheezes, right? So you'll see it in certain protocols to where if you hear wheezes bilaterally initially, you're going to start them off on a neb treatment with 2.5 milligrams of albuterol and 0.5 milligrams of Atrovent via nebulizer. And upon reassessment, maybe after 2 rounds or 3 rounds, depending on your protocol, it might allow you to escalate to a CPAP that has a fixture, a one-way valve right here, all right, this one-way valve, that you can apply a nebulizer chamber up this one-way valve. So it has to be, that one-way valve has to be facing down, and we can apply this nebkit to that chamber. Now we would need a second oxygen tubing to that, and then which would imply a second oxygen tank for that. And so be mindful, if you have severe respiratory distress with wheezes, after a couple rounds of a nebulizer, you might have the opportunity to escalate to albuterol via CPAP, okay? So that's the third indication. The fourth indication could be a flail segment or a flail chest, and so that's where you see paradoxical movement with the chest, so typically blunt force trauma, and 2 or more ribs are fractured at 2 or more sites, becoming a free-floating island. Remember, when we inhale, our diaphragm contracts downward, creating a negative pressure in our chest, and so typically our chest expands, but because of that negative pressure and this multiple fractures on 2 different ribs, it's going to get sucked in because of that negative pressure, whereas the unaffected side is going to come out. So it's this paradoxical or opposite movement that we're witnessing on this patient. And we have to ensure that this patient does not have a tension pneumothorax. So double check your lung sounds and make sure you don't hear diminished or absent lung sounds, because those would be contraindications to positive airway pressure and CPAP. That's it, guys. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below or DM us. Typically in most protocols, once you apply CPAP, it's written that do not remove or stop CPAP until you transfer care, and they will have respiratory at your receiving destination to transfer care to. Especially if it's pulmonary edema, we don't want to stop that pressure for that fluid to come back into the alveoli, and in one sense, it could feel like that patient might be drowning from the inside. So yeah, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the section below, DM us. If you saw it, if you got any value from this video, please give us a like or a thumbs up. If you want to see more of these videos, I am slowly trying to update these videos. Give us a follow, a subscribe, and we will see you in the next one. Cheers, take care.